There was more to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom than just another journey. It was the scariest and darkest side trip in the whole series. It was meant to be a prequel, so instead of desert sands, it had forests, rope bridges, and an underground temple where real life and death were at stake. But there was danger behind the mine carts and the hearts that had been ripped out before the cameras came out. The first writer quit before the movie even started. Harrison Ford shot with a hernia that would have stopped most actors in their tracks. And the violence caused a ratings war that not only scared people, but also changed all the rules in Hollywood. Here are 20 strange things you might not know about Temple of Doom. And even though it was dangerous and controversial, the title made it sound like a straight-up horror movie. It wasn't just a pulp story, this was darkness heading straight for us. In the beginning, the movie was called Indiana Jones and the Temple of Death before it was known as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It fit George Lucas and Steven Spielberg's early ideas for the movie that would come after Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is darker, more dangerous, and there are more personal risks for Indiana Jones. In the story they were making up, there were cruel practices like child slavery and sacrificing people. Much darker themes than anything in the first movie. But as work on it went on, they realized that using the word death made it sound too scary. It could turn off the family crowds that made Raiders a worldwide hit. Spielberg wanted something scary that also reminded people of the pulpy high-adventure shows that had inspired the series in the first place. It was fair to change it to Temple of Doom. The danger was still there, but it was less intense. It promised an exciting trip without giving away how dark and controversial the adventure would get. Number 2. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg chose to set Temple of Doom a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is not what most movies do. The movie is set in 1935. Which is before Indiana Jones ever goes after the Ark of the Covenant. This choice wasn't made at chance, it was made to solve a problem. The Nazis were already established as the perfect bad guys in Raiders, but Lucas didn't want to use the same enemy in the next movie. He wanted something completely different. By moving the story back in time, they were no longer limited by World War II, and the Thungi cult in India became a new threat. The flashback structure also gave Indy a slightly different edge, making him seem like a character who hadn't quite faced his toughest tests yet. This made his moral choices in Temple of Doom feel more uncertain and dangerous. For lunch, I ate bugs. Please give me your hat. Why? Because I'm gonna throw up in it. Number 3. Since Raiders of the Lost Ark was a hit, it made sense to have Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the first movie, write the sequel as well. But Kasdan responded right away when George Lucas and Steven Spielberg told him about their plans for Temple of Doom. He chose not to do it. The new story was much bigger, weirder, and darker than Raiders. In place of desert heroes, it showed a nightmare world full of underground groups, child slavery, and graphic human sacrifice. Later, Kasdan said it was mean-spirited and that he didn't like the dark tone, so he didn't try to change the idea. He just left, leaving Lucas and Spielberg to find new writers. They went to Willard Hook and Gloria Katz, a husband and wife team who like classic fiction and adventure stories. Hook and Katz took things to the very edges, which kept the risk high and the moral stakes high. Because of this, the script put Indiana Jones on his most violent and immoral journey, and fans are still divided about it today. Number 4. It wasn't just the story that got darker as Temple of Doom came together. The years the directors were making the movie were some of the hardest of their lives. It was hard for George Lucas because he was going through a breakup. He felt sad and antsy. Steven Spielberg said he wasn't in the mood for another fun movie like Raiders because he was still upset about his own split. The inner turmoil made its way into the tone of the movie. Temple of Doom didn't have any desert treasure hunts or romantic banter. Instead, it had dark temples, children being forced to work as slaves, and religious sacrifices. There were times when Indiana Jones was written as colder and less trusting, someone who is driven by money and fame instead of pure bravery. Later, Spielberg would call it the black sheep of the series. It came about because of how Lucas and he were feeling at the time. That raw, uneasy energy, on the other hand, gave the movie its power. A feeling that the danger wasn't just on the screen, but also in the air behind the camera. Number 5. There was no reason for Ke Quan to try out for Temple of Doom. While his bigger brother was trying out for a part in the movie, he went with them. He was 12 years old. While they were waiting, casting directors saw Kay teaching his brother by reading his lines, blocking his moves, and outshining him without meaning to. They were interested, so they asked Kay to read for the part of Short Round, Indy's smart partner. Everyone liked him even though he had never been acting before because of his natural charm, great timing, and bold delivery. Steven Spielberg really liked how Kay could play Harrison Ford head-to-head, doing well in both comedic and emotional scenes. He went from being a kid waiting in the wings to being a major character in one of the biggest action movies of the decade in just one afternoon. That's how Short Round was born. A scene stealer who was found by, well, stealing the scene. He's crazy! Sixth, at first, Temple of Doom was supposed to film a lot of its important scenes in India, where the government allowed the movie to use beautiful locations and real Indian culture backdrops. But when the story was read by officials, they didn't like it. People thought it was offensive and politically risky to show Indian culture in ways like ritual slaughter and poverty and servitude. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting said they wouldn't let them shoot unless big changes were made to the script. Spielberg and Lucas didn't want to change their story, so they stopped the whole shoot in India. The village and jungle scenes were filmed in Sri Lanka instead. The internal scenes, including the temple itself, were filmed on huge sound stages at Elstree Studios in England. The change cost a lot of money, but it gave the filmmakers more power over the stunts and sets. The band did leave a mark, though. India was brought to life in the movie without anyone ever going to the real country.
Dr. Joe, you lie! You lie!
You did it! Keep everything! 7th, Harrison Ford felt a sharp pain in his back in the middle of shooting Temple of Doom. It turned out to be a herniated disc, which is the kind of injury that can keep an actor out for months, especially in an action movie with a lot of stunts. Ford didn't want to quit, though. For a few weeks, he shot as much as he could without hurting himself more, even though it hurt. Less fight scenes and twice as many of his stunts. Vic Armstrong took on more work than he had planned. At some point, the pain was too much to bear, so Ford went to Los Angeles for emergency surgery. Surprisingly, he was back on set in Sri Lanka just a few weeks later, picking up right where he left off. He even did parts that were hard on his body, like the climax of Rope Bridge. Later, Spielberg praised Ford's toughness, saying that most players would have quit the whole project. Ford was determined to finish Temple of Doom on time, which showed that Indy's toughness was real and not just a personality trait. These people eat all of that food in a week. They need food badly. I'm sorry. You can have it. You didn't. I'll go next. You're insulting them and making me look bad. Stop it. Take it and eat it. Number 8. For the famous scene in the insect chamber, the team got about 80,000 live bugs, such as stick insects and giant cockroaches. Kate Capshaw was scared when she played Willie Scott. It was said that she took a Valium to calm down before shooting. Still, she had to shoot for days while bugs crawled over her hair, clothes, and skin. Some of the bugs were even glued in place to make sure they stayed on camera. Capshaw did it anyway, giving one of the funniest scenes in the movie, a performance that was equal parts scream queen and hesitant adventurer. 19. In Temple of Doom, Kate Capshaw wore a stunning red sequined gown that looked amazing in the opening nightclub scene, but it wasn't made for the type of shooting that came next. The cloth and tiny beads were so fragile that even moving too quickly could tear them. The outfit was a nightmare when the shoot went from the planned dance number to the wild jungle scenes. When they started shooting with the elephants, things got worse. A very interested elephant reached out and wrapped its trunk around a part of Capshaw's dress during one take and tore off a piece before anyone could stop it. Capshaw laughed about it, but the wardrobe team was in a panic trying to fix the harm. To make things even more difficult, they only had one dress and no extras. To keep the chain going, each bead had to be carefully reattached. That shimmering gown made it through the rest of filming, but it was one of the hardest outfits in the whole Indiana Jones series to keep clean.
Oh, Indiana Jones, you'll never forget this night, wishes!
Number 10. In the first 10 minutes of Temple of Doom, one of the craziest stunts takes place. Indy, Willie, and Short Round jump from a plane that is going down in an inflatable raft. They then slide down a snowy mountain and into a river. The stunt team carefully planned the scene, but some parts of it were shot in real life. A plane dropped a raft off a hill in the Canadian Rockies, and stunt people rode it down the mountain. The scene's crazy cartoonish energy came from a mix of real action work and miniatures, and it became one of the most talked about beginnings of the series. I don't like it when you call him Dr. Joe's dog. Okay. Number 11. character names in Temple of Doom were a way for both George Lucas and Steven Spielberg to add personal touches to the movie. Short Round was named after the dog that screenwriters Willard Hick and Gloria Katz owned. Schauberg's own dog, Willie, gave Scott his name. And, of course, Indiana Jones was named after George Lucas' Alaskan Malamute many years before. It's a running joke in the series that some of Indy's adventures are based on man's best friend. This tradition was very much living in Temple of Doom. 13. When Indy, Willie, and Short Round first get to the poor Indian town, the elder tells them about the stolen sacred stone and the children who have been taken. The dialogue is subbed. A lot of people who watched the show don't know that the actors who played the locals didn't really speak English. Real people from Sri Lanka were cast in the show, and the elder spoke in his own language. With the help of a translator, Spielberg directed the scene and made sure that the tone and speed were just right. Part of what makes the scene feel so real is how real it is. The people in the town weren't speaking perfect Hollywood English. It was their own voice coming from the heart as they talked about loss and hopelessness. 13. The scary Mola Ram was played by Amrish Puri, but he was more than just a bad guy on one set. He was a star all over a whole continent. Puri was already one of India's most successful stars by the time Temple of Doom was being filmed. It's hard to believe that they have such a full routine. He worked on the 19 movies at the same time while they were being made. This meant that his days were very busy. He would film a scene as Mola Ram and then fly back to India to play a totally different part, often a love lead, sometimes a father figure, and sometimes another bad guy. The big changes in character didn't bother him. Later, Spielberg said that Puri was the best bad guy the series had ever had, and Temple of Doom proved it. Even though he was working on almost 20 movies at the same time, Puri gave Mola Ram a spooky, intense quality that made it memorable and proved why he is still a legend in Indian film.
Hey, Mola Ram, let it go!
You are not in a good place to give orders. 14. The beginning of the movie takes place in a fancy Shanghai bar in the 1930s. A glowing sign above the door says, Club Obi-Wan, which is a joke about George Lucas, Spielberg's friend and the author of Star Wars. The two directors had made references to each other's work in their movies before, but this was one of the clearest examples. From the very beginning of the movie, fans who were paying attention saw a wink that linked two of the biggest action series of all time. 13. Action scenes in Temple of Doom that will blow your mind weren't even shot in full scale. Spielberg used a lot of detailed tiny models for scenes like the minecart chase. Industrial light and magic made complicated track layouts with small minecarts, tunnels, and landscapes in the background. Motion control cameras were used to film the models. These cameras could move at exact speeds, which made it look like the little carts were racing very quickly. The footage was then put together with shots of the players on real sets, making the two look like they were always there. The effect still looks good today, which shows how well ILM and Spielberg were able to combine practical genius with big screen entertainment. The famous rope bridge fight near the end of the movie was a logistics nightmare, since it wasn't built in just one spot. Sri Lanka was used to film the main bridge, which goes across a 200-foot valley. Close-ups of the players were shot safely on a fake bridge at Elstree Studios in England. In California, a detailed miniature was used to film wide shots of the bridge breaking. It looked like one continuous spot because of the way the scenes were edited, but they were actually the work of 3 countries working together for one of the most famous scenes in Indiana Jones history.
It's a letsu!
17. Even though Temple of Doom is full of chaos and show, Steven Spielberg has said that the famous spike room trap scene is his favorite part of the whole movie. When it was first thought of, it was a pure pulp adventure, with lots of bugs, stone walls closing in, and dangerous spikes rising toward Indiana Jones in the short round. At its most tense, Willie slams the release, forcing her hand through a wall of bugs to save them. She feels relieved for a split second, but as soon as she steps inside, her behind hits the trigger, and the trap starts over. Before the stone slab slams shut, Indy grabs his fedora from the floor, which is the right ending to the scene. Spielberg loved it because it had all the things he wanted an Indiana Jones scene to have. There is danger, laughter, character development, and great timing. Though there were big rope bridges and minecart chases, it was this squished bug-filled set piece that made him happiest with his job. 18. Temple of Doom scared people, especially parents, when it came out in cinemas in 1984. Even though the movie was rated PG, there were scenes that were much scarier than anything in Raiders. Child labor, religious killings, and Mola Ram ripping a victim's still beating hard out of their chest are all things that happened. A lot of people complained to the MPA that it was too violent for kids but not explicit enough for a R grade. Steven Spielberg heard about the trouble and agreed that there was a hole in the system. He recommended making a new rating that would be in the middle. This rating would let parents know about content that is too strong for PG without calling the movie R. The MPA paid attention. Not long after that, in August 1984, Red Dawn was the first movie to get the PG-13 rating. Temple of Doom and Spielberg's Gremlins were the two movies most often blamed for that change. Not only did it change the independent series, but it also changed the way Hollywood labels its movies for good. Are you crazy? I'm not going without the stones. Go after your damn wealth and glory,
Or you might die, not today, though.
19. People didn't love Temple of Doom as much when it came out as they loved Raiders of the Lost Ark. It got a lot of bad reviews because it was too dark, violent, and not as fun as the first movie. Some people didn't like how fast it went or how sad it was, saying it was more tiring than exciting. Others said it was more about shock value than story, pointing to the scenes of child labor and religious sacrifice as proof that it went too far. Spielberg later said that the movie was a bit too dark for his tastes, which was likely because he was going through some tough times at the time. But viewers didn't agree with critics who said it was the best in the series. The movie made over $300 million around the world, showing that Indiana Jones could still draw big crowds to the theater. Since then, Temple of Doom has been looked at again, and many fans now enjoy its bold tone and crazy set pieces. Even though reviewers tried to bury it, Indiana Jones's second adventure wouldn't stay hidden. 21. Even though it caused a lot of trouble, Temple of Doom was a technology marvel that was ahead of its time in 1984. Scenes from the movie that will blow your mind, like the raft escape in a raging river and the chase in a runaway minecart, used a seamless mix of full-scale stunt work, detailed models, and cutting-edge visual effects. The visual effects team at ILM made minecart tracks that looked like roller coasters, using small cars to carefully film them so that the movements of the players would match. Matty paintings made huge buildings look bigger, and smart compositing made stunts that were not possible look real. People did notice that skilled goal. The 57th Academy Awards gave the award for Best Visual Effects to Temple of Doom, beating out Ghostbusters and 2010, the year we make contact. It reminded us that Indy's second adventure was a masterpiece, even if some people didn't like the way it felt. The thrills weren't just in the story, but in the sheer skill with which it was brought to life. It's a fun fact that Indiana Jones' fedora is one of the most famous movie costumes ever, and the one from Temple of Doom set a new record for auction sales. It was put up for auction at Prop Store's Entertainment Memorabilia Auction in Los Angeles in 2021. Harrison Ford wore the fedora in the movie. It sold for a lot more than anyone thought it would, selling for an amazing 300 Zalausern. The hat was made by Herbert Johnson Hatters in London, and it was shaped and aged to fit Ford's head and the rough jungle scene of the movie. Its worn look wasn't just planned, it happened naturally while it was being filmed. For fans, it was more than just a hat. It was a piece of movie history, a sign of adventure that had been through minecart chases, rope bridges, and the darkest independent story ever written. As a scientist, you do a lot of work, right? All the time. What kinds of things would you look into about me? Activities at night. What kind of cream do you mean? I use it at night. How I like to lie down at night. Customs for mating. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was scary, controversial, and impossible to forget. It was different from the Raiders movies and pushed the edges of PG movies. In doing so, it helped make a whole new movie rating. It gave us Short Round, who is now one of the most popular supporting characters in the genre, and Mola Ram, a bad guy that people still fear today. It had to deal with location bans, injuries at the start, and swarms of real bugs, but it still had some of the most ambitious action scenes ever made for film. It has a place in movie history, no matter if you think it's the most daring or most controversial part of the series. Let me know if this one still makes you hold on to your armrest during the rope bridge scene. Let us know what mythical adventure we should look into next, because the most dangerous trips are sometimes the best ones.